You're listening to Girls, Ghosts, and Ghouls, a showcase of specters, spirits, and spooks, as well as the women who love them. Only on ZTO TV Podcasts.
Timely, topical, and terrifying.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, where we talk about Psycho today, which is a personal favorite of mine. And I believe, actually, we all really enjoy this movie. So,
yes,
absolutely.
I was even talking on the phone this morning with my mother about it, and she brought up a few points that
Excellent.
I'll be able to bring in later. So, yeah, I adore this movie. There's so much in it.
Such good stuff. Yeah. So if you've never seen it, it's basically what happens when you have a traumatized child with a overt edible complex that, kills his mom and then develops a dissociative personality where the mother is a homicidal, jealous half that pretty much kills anything that he gets attracted to. And that's pretty much Psycho.
Yeah. I'd like to think, frankly, that's one of Alfred Hitchcock's bests.
Absolutely.
I would agree, though I would say I'm not an Alfred Hitchcock connoisseur, so I have not watched everything he's ever done.
I haven't watched everything he's done, but
what I've watched is
seen like a sampling of both his movies, and he did a TV anthology, something like the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, the Alfred Hitchcock series.
Presents. It was a series.
Thank you.
And it actually ran around the same time as he was filming Psycho. Like it was already in the works and on the TV, and then. Yeah.
In fact, in the weird facts that I found, at one point he wasn't sure the movie was going to work. They were really low budget, and he was like, "Well, if push comes to shove, we'll just cut us some stuff and make it one of the TV shows."
One of the episodes, yep.
Is literally what was happening, and then this happened.
Yeah, he also shot it in black and white in an addition. Well, that was actually a two-pronged thing. One, it was cheaper to do so, and two, he knew he would never get it past the censors if it was in color, particularly the scenes, some of the scenes later in the movie where blood is shown.
Yep.
That in 1960, that would have never flown. And as it is, he really pushed the edge.
Yeah, I was going to say, he had a lot of fights, if I recall correctly. I remember reading some weird thing where one of the things that actually caused a huge issue was flushing the pieces of paper down the toilet.
Yes. That was the first time,
which is funny because you see Janet Leigh in like bras and slips, like which is absolutely stunning. Don't get me wrong, but it was the toilet that was the big thing.
Yeah, it's a really. There's just so much. So, do we want to just dive in?
Yeah,
okay, great.
Rebecca, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind, because I remember that you had a lot of Psycho trivia to begin with, and you had that combo with your mom. So,
yeah. This one is an all-time classic. Everybody knows when you say the words the shower scene in Psycho, everybody just immediately leaps to mind. So this is something
up, you start stabbing.
and you start making the music, which I'll bring a point on the music later, is that the musical score initially when he did the film. Are we still on?
Yeah,
I
we
see
are.
Aaron. Okay,
Aaron's sharing a screen. Sorry,
Aaron's sharing a screen. Yeah. So, the movie initially, when Alfred Hitchcock screened it, screened it without a score, and there was kind of a lukewarm response. And then when he added the score in that shower scene,
which, if I may interject, was
Alma
Revile. That's his wife who came up with. She's like, "This is what we need in here." It was the song. She came up.
Wonderful.
With the score. She didn't make the score. She chose the score. Let me be clear. Sorry. Go ahead.
But I think the score was very integral, frankly, in the success of the movie. Even in just the opening music, it's a tense kind of style with the violins again, and I think that was a great thing from the start. And so you have it the camera pans over the city, and it opens on the scene of Janet Leigh and the other actor
who plays Sam Loomis. Yeah, his
name. He plays Sam. So Marion and Sam are in the room, and it's very clear that they've just had an afternoon interlude in one of those hotels where you pay by the hour.
You have to pay up front if you have no luggage. It comes in later.
Yeah. And in 1960, to show an unmarried couple, clearly they have finished having sex. I mean, Janet Leigh is there in her slip and her bra.
He's putting his shirt on.
He's just putting his shirt on, which I gotta say, props. They picked a nice looking actor. He had some nice guns on him.
It's John Gavin. I just looked it up.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with him besides in Psycho, to be honest.
Neither am I. I didn't look up his IMDb. So
apparently Hitchcock wasn't a huge fan. He called him the stiff through the entire thing.
Part of him was
wanted
stiff,
a different actor, and then the studio forced him to use this actor. So he was not fond of this particular actor.
Oh, he was an Imitation of Life, which is an excellent movie. Sorry, sidetrack.
Okay,
I just looked it up.
I'm gonna have to look. Yeah, I will definitely have to look that up. So from the beginning, you can see that Hitchcock is really pushing the limits on what he can get by on screen. Now, by 1960, a lot of the Hollywood production code had degraded. It was not nearly as strict as it used to be with the censors, but there were still things which were normally not going to fly in 1960s movies. But he manages
flushing, for instance. No, sorry.
Toilet bowls, yeah. And so he sets up the point that we have a very disenchanted main female character. I'm not really going to say main lead because she's not in the movie for very long.
But she was still technically the lead. That was one of his innovations, was killing off the lead.
Yeah. Yes. I read somewhere like it's still only one of a handful of movies that does that, where like the lead character dies in the first like third of the movie.
Yeah, I honestly can't think of many movies now that do that either. So
Scream did a play on it where they made it seem like Drew Barrymore was going to be the star, and then they killed her off in the first minute. But
and there's been a couple others similar to that too. But Psycho was first and did it best, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely,
yeah,
because you were really engaged with Marion.
Yeah, and you can see that she is unhappy. She wants to have the married life with the house with the picket fence and the 2.5 children
with the stiff.
Who's probably still slightly stiff at this point in the movie. And he basically doesn't really apparently have that great of a job either.
Yeah, and so he owns a hardware store, and basically his whining scene is that he had debt from his father, who probably owned the store originally, and had an ex-wife that he had to pay alimony to. And so
because there's a little rant about that, that he's paying off alimony and he's paying off debts, and so they don't feel like they can really get a start in life at this point. And he's been kind of dragging her on, and she pretty much is like, look, I'm about to hit my limit. We either move this forward or we cut it off. And so she goes to her job. She's a secretary at some kind of real estate business, and when she comes in, you see she's flustered. But also then her boss comes in, and then the Texas oil
skis. Oh, what a skis. Sorry.
Yes, no, you're right. I was going to bring that up. This scene when they're in the office and the Texas oil baron is discussing his business deal where he's putting $40,000 cash down on a house.
Which he would never carry unless he could afford to lose it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which actually I think it implied that it wasn't even putting down. I think he just was outright buying it for $40,000 in the 1960s.
That might be. I didn't.
Which is irrelevant, but
close enough attention to that. But so she's the secretary that's going to take that money to the bank.
Yeah, now, he's gratuitously hitting on her. It is so
gratuitously. And her coworker is like, "Oh, you have a headache? Here, take some Valium. My doctor gave it to me on the day of my wedding."
I'm like, day of my wedding.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. Apparently weddings or marriage in that time was that stressful. But then again, that was kind of the age when you had the idea of mother's little helper.
Right. Well, and the time that would have been right in the time when they were literally putting women to sleep for childbirth. So
I'm not convinced that part is necessarily bad, though. Not that I've had children, but I understand
it looks awful to me. I'd rather be knocked out.
Yeah, yeah.
Just wake me up when it's over and there's a baby. Thanks.
I don't even care if it's mine, just as long as it's not me anymore.
Yeah. You know, and you can see the boss is also unhappy with this because he realizes, I'm sure, you know,
huge
keeping
risk,
money.
$40,000 cash. Yeah.
Nobody, I mean, my God, think about how nervous we all are carrying around our vaccination cards for 3 weeks.
Right.
And that's just a little card of paper. Think about $40,000 in 1960, which comes out to $357,000 in today's money. You think about you guys, you have $357,000 in your hands, and you can probably, you have a 2 days head start.
Think about being able to lose $350,000. You know what I mean?
I can't.
Never carry on more than I can afford to lose.
Yeah, it's zero reference for that. And so her boss is like, you know, take it to the bank right away. And a side note, her boss was in at least one, if not more, episodes of The Twilight Zone. Minor trivia fact, there are 4 different actors that were in the Twilight Zone episodes that are in this film.
Was one of them the guy who played Arbogast? Sorry to jump ahead, but
yes.
Okay, I thought that he was familiar from that. Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Driving me nuts. I was going to ask you about that at some point.
Her boss, later on, when you know, after, so I'll okay, it's. I was like, should I go later, time and chronologically? And then I realized later I'm probably going to forget. So there's 4. In there. Yeah, there's boss. There's the car salesman, California Charlie, who was in a couple of very good episodes. It might have only been one, A Passage for Trumpet. I highly recommend you look it up. There was Arbogast.
I love that name, by the way. It's just fun to say.
Arbogast is such a good name.
It sounds like the name of a wizard from like a Tolkien film or something.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's just odd.
Yeah. And the 4th was the psychiatrist at the end.
Yes.
That makes
now
sense.
That you say it, I'm sure I've seen it.
Was I can't remember the name of the episode, but basically they were dealing. A Navy ship was dealing with sort of a man who was haunted by a naval accident.
Oh.
So.
And actually, if you don't mind, because I'll probably forget this, I actually was a little bit shocked about how, for 1960, woke that psychiatrist commentary was on the difference between, you know, transvestite and what Norman Bates was.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting that they had added that in to explain that this was not the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was interesting too. In fact, when we watched it, I was like, I thought this was going to be much, much worse. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Kudos to you.
Yeah, exactly.
The extemporis at the end was interesting.
Yeah.
So Janet Leigh's character, perfectly understandable, cannot resist the money. No, ready money.
This is the answer to her prayers. You know, this is all Sam needs to be free, right? It's just the debt, the alimony. Here's $40,000. They can go run off into the sunset.
Yep. It's life-changing money for her. So she decides, she's like, well, I'm going to take this money at a 2 day start. Nobody's going to even notice till Monday. So there she goes. So she goes off and manages to see her boss on the way out of town as she's sitting in her car. What are the odds? Bad luck. So she goes on and she decides to pull over and take a little bit of a rest. And then she is stopped. A policeman sees the car the next morning and, you know, does that knock, knock, knock on the door. What are you doing?
Which was a real dick of a policeman. Like, I mean, this sounds awful, but I was a little surprised that they put in a scene where the cop was harassing her that much. And I don't know if they just wanted to set her paranoia up more, but I mean, it was like, you would have thought, I was going to say something insensitive, but you would not expect that kind of behavior for a white woman alone on the road. You would expect more that he would have been like, are you okay, ma'am? Do you need an escort somewhere?
Yeah.
You need assistance.
He would have been more solicitous, more benevolent chauvinism.
You would have expected privilege to show up there, and that's not how they played it in this movie.
Yeah, because honestly, when I was watching that one, I mean, I don't think she was that suspicious.
No,
maybe
That's the
for
one thing I thought was a little weird about the movie. Like, I
Yeah.
really think that Hitchcock was trying to play up that she was very paranoid, but it came out more like that cop was very weird.
I was gonna say it came off more like the cop was paranoid. If she'd have been shiftier or weirder, I think that might have played a little better. So that he would have been like, okay, there's something up with her. Or if he'd have seen like a flash of the envelope for a minute, like really seen it, and you'd be like, oh, he sees that there's something weird going on. But they didn't do that.
No, they didn't do any of that.
Really, I mean, it might be something we lose in time, like maybe 1960s woman driving alone and being on the side of the road would have been super suspicious.
I mean, entirely probably.
But I would think the suspicion would have been more like someone's chasing her and she's in trouble, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
It was just strange. I mean, cops are pricks apparently, but you know, like, well, in case we didn't know.
We know the answer to that one.
Like, in case we didn't know, apparently in the 60s, obviously they were too.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, and I agree. I don't think her behavior was that out of the question. I mean, you just woke up. You're tired. You're going to be a little off. And the cop immediately was way over the line. But I do agree with you, Jenny. I think it was Hitchcock needed to amp up the paranoia. So she goes to sell the car. She drives on a little bit. She thinks maybe I should get rid of the car. And she stops at the basically the first used car dealership. And that
conveniently located on the exit she went off.
Yes. And that honestly, I think is where the weird behavior gets started.
Yeah. Like that's where I would be suspicious. Like I agree with the used cars though. It seemed very strange.
That was really odd. And in a time when, I mean, literally in a time when women couldn't even get like a credit card.
Right.
This woman is walking in and paying cash for a new car. Like
that is really, even in the 90s, when I went and bought a used car, I had the salesman ask me if my boyfriend, significant other, you know, knew that I was buying a car and if he was okay with it and we could afford it.
I'm not
surprised. So imagine the 60s.
Yeah. Which that, you know, her showing up alone, I think, to look at a car in the 1960s, I do agree. A salesman might have thought it a little odd. And then she's very hurry. She doesn't even want to test drive the car, which, you know, would have taken her just a minute or two, or, you know, just a couple minutes to bargain the guy down to allay suspicion.
Right.
She did none of those things.
No. Yeah. This is definitely where she starts to act really suspicious. Like,
but you can see she hesitated for a minute until he called her out, you know, like she's like, isn't it, you know, okay, can I be in a hurry? And then he was like, 700 plus your trade-in. And she hesitates where you can see she's about to go maybe a little less. And he's like, oh, I see we have time to bargain though.
Yeah.
So then she just like shuts up, is like 700 is fine. I'm like, no, you know what, bitch, you always have time to bargain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You already look suspicious. Try to wave him down to 500. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you know, 5 minutes just to go drive around the block, a few minutes to haggle. You've got essentially tons of money in your purse. You might want to.
And the cop's already across the street staring at you. So really, you might want to act a little more chill.
Right. Yeah. The cop is right there. So why not act as normal as possible so that he's not like, oh, she bought a new car so that she would hide from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the cop can now see the new car you're buying. So there's, if that was the reason you were doing it.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. So, you know,
and then almost takes off without her suitcase.
Yeah. Amp up more paranoia. Yeah. You're right. I forgot about that little part. So it's clear from start to finish, this encounter is gonna stick in the salesman's mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and the cops now for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So after that, she heads off, and I like the way they deal with the theft being discovered. As she's driving, they're essentially doing kind of like a voiceover with the other actors acting out. I wasn't sure
if that was supposed to be her believing that in her mind, like that's what was going on, or if it was supposed to be like a fourth wall thing going on. Where
exactly.
Well, and I think
is it really happening? We don't know.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. And there's a lot of times in this movie where you can look at it and go, is that the case, or is
that her mind playing with her, or is that
Yeah.
also what's actually
Yeah.
happening and filling you in at the same time? Which I think it actually truly was a combination of both, because clearly they discovered the theft at some point. I mean, it may not have been at that point, but
yeah. And so she then, when she's going away, she's driving through the classic dark and stormy night and sees dun, 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 the iconic Bates Motel.
yeah.
Yeah,
Soon
I
to be her
think
demise.
I think we all, like, again, that's another image which is sort of in our collective psyche at this point.
Yep. And bring on Anthony Perkins, who he was so perfect in this role. I mean, his mannerisms, this far off look. And actually, if you don't mind, Rebecca, I'm going to jump to Betsy for a little bit, because I know she's like got the whole Anthony Perkins haunting trauma to go through. And
absolutely.
Trivia. So,
which, by the way, I bought the book that led to my weird haunting. So when I was in high school, I worked briefly at the library, and I was shelving books one day in the nonfiction section, and I found a book called Split Image, The Life of Anthony Perkins, which I picked up because it was Anthony Perkins, and I had watched Psycho, and I was like, yes, I would love to know about his life. I'm totally going to pick this up.
Oh, yeah.
So I picked it up and I started reading it, and then I would turn on the TV and there would be an Anthony Perkins movie on every single time. Movies I had never even heard of until I started watching this.
Yeah.
Like,
which there was one he was in. Damn it, my mom mentioned it to me.
In all honesty, I remember him being Psycho and Murder on the Orient Express, and of course the Psycho sequels. And
he was in a movie that was set in the Civil War. He was the son in a family of Quakers, and it was very much they're Quakers, they're pacifists, but they're getting robbed and attacked by Southern forces that are coming over the border. What do you do when you're a pacifist?
I mean, can you set a trap?
Yeah. I'm not a Quaker. I don't know. Yeah. So he's been in varied movies, and my mom said that's actually one of the things my mom said. She saw him in Psycho, and then she saw him in this movie, and he was like 180 degrees of the character.
If you he started when they pulled him in, they wanted him to be the answer to James Dean for their studio. He was pulled in by Paramount, and they wanted him to be their answer to James Dean because he had boyish good looks. He was very charming. He was, very good looking, very striking, and this is what they wanted. And so they were putting him in a little bit of everything. But they had a tendency to put him with like these crazy leading women, and he got very intimidated by leading women, probably because he was closeted. But so they would say things like their love scenes had no passion. And that's, even Hitchcock was like, I noticed that he got very shy around the ladies, like Janet Leigh, around Vera Miles. He was very shy around them. But then he would come out and like do weird stuff and like be fun. He came up with games on the set. When they were between takes, they would play Hangman or various things. And then they would play a game that he came up with, which was called Essence, where you had to figure out who the famous person was that he was thinking of by asking questions that could only be answered by yes or no. And they said those moments he came out and you were like, oh, he's so dynamic and so wonderful. And apparently there were several scenes that he actually rewrote, which Hitchcock doesn't do.
Oh, wow.
But he would get into them and he liked them so well. And he'd be like, what if I did this instead? And Hitchcock's like, yeah, that's fine. Would throw out. And Hitchcock is very like, I
control freak is what I had read.
Hitchcock was very much my way director.
Yeah. And apparently he just really liked Anthony a lot. Like he was the first person he thought of for the role when he read the book.
Wow.
So, and he got him. And
I forgot to mention that it was a movie based on a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is based on a book by Robert Bloch.
Now, correct me, was it about Ed Gaines?
It's based on Ed Gein. Yeah. Yeah, it's based on Ed Gein. And they said the original book, he's a fat, old, like 40s, 50s.
Which Gaines was, yeah.
But when Hitchcock bought it, he's like, no, that man isn't someone that people will like root for, because we want to feel sympathy for him.
Yeah, because
Gaines even had a hunchback that helped him dig up bodies in the graveyard. He's a whole different
right.
I'm not sure of the veracity of that.
No, I looked it up. He did.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
It is one of the weird facts about him. Not all the skins and bodies he had hanging in his farm were people he killed. Some of them were people he dug up.
Oh yeah, I know the majority of them.
And occasionally had a friend who was deformed that helped him. A friend, I use the term loosely. It was, a crony basically.
Yeah, but I can see where they definitely would have had to cast
a whole different movie.
Cast somebody else. Frankly, if they wanted screen appeal.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why he decided to go the direction that he did, and he wanted someone who was very good looking, and so he chose Anthony Perkins.
Oh yeah.
But so I never finished this book, which is why I bought it. Because then I would be shelving books, and there would be books based on movies by him in the wrong area of the, like, he was everywhere. And I mean, it'll sometimes do that, but it was to the nth degree of it that it was like really starting to freak me out, like really bad. And so I stopped reading the book and returned it. So now I own my own copy. So hopefully he'll start haunting me again. I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go look up some of his other films because
I'm trying to think. He definitely did. There was one called The Matchmaker, which is basically the straight, like the non-musical version of Hello, Dolly. And he played the shopkeeper. His name, Cornelius. I can't remember his last name.
I've never seen Hello, Dolly, so.
I definitely have, and I'm not going to sing at you right now.
Might be a little jarring with our subject matter.
Right? But he did it for $40,000. That's how much it costs to get Anthony Perkins for this.
Kind of amusing considering that's the amount of money in the movie. Yeah,
that's what they said. They also said that they think that they actually rewrote, the part where he's talking about, when I was 5 years old, my dad died, and then it was just me and my mom and a man's best friend. He had a really close relationship with his mom, Anthony Perkins, in real life. His father died when he was 5. His father had been an actor and left him and his mother alone. And then his mom kind of ruled his life with an iron fist for the rest of his life. They were very, very close. She was always part of his life. It was her friend. She had a woman who lived with him for years and years and years. He called her Auntie Dorothy, or his aunt, but they were not related. And she really ruled his life for years. And so some of this they think is autobiographical. They may have actually changed some of those facts in the script to fit his actual life so that he could deliver that so poignantly.
In my research, I also read that actually, so since his father was an actor, he was away from home a lot, even when he was alive. And since Anthony was so close to his mother, when his father would come back, he was actually resentful of his father's presence. And as a child would wish his father would go away, not come back. And then his father died, and he felt a great deal of guilt and remorse, like that he had wished his father dead.
And I think you bring up a good point. I do agree. I think there was some of his life bleeding into the movie. Because he seemed sympathetic. It's slightly odd.
He's a little odd, but I kept thinking this is the kind of charming weirdo that you would meet like I usually make friends with them, so it didn't bother me that much. I was like, he's charming. He's a charming weirdo.
Yes. And he invites the main character, the main lead,
Marion.
to have dinner, Marion, to have dinner with him.
I understand. Don't worry about it.
Yes, I briefly
It just
phased
falls out
out
your
on the
brain
name.
sometimes.
Yeah. No, and so they, they were going to go have dinner, and you hear the mother's voice railing against it, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't
In
even
a
remember
very
everything she
unpleasant
said.
manner. So Marion's a whore. You will not have this woman come to my house. Kind of.
Yeah.
Bring her in here for your sin.
Mom, she's just hungry. And that's when you're like, okay, family's a little weird.
If I were Marion, I'd have been like, I'm not hungry.
No, I'm not. I think I'm just going to go to bed. Thank you.
You know what? I think I'm just going to go away. You told me it's 15 miles to the town I'm going to.
I'll be there. Yeah, thanks. Bye. Keep the money.
Especially so during the dinner. So
I have some points about that too. Yeah. Go ahead.
My only point about it was just, I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with somebody that is unhinged at some degree, like not necessarily a homicidal murderer, but
yes.
So what I thought was interesting is that shift. You could see that shift where you're having that nice normal conversation, you say something and it triggers them, and the next thing you know, you're in fear because you don't know if this person's about to attack you. And that happened in that parlor dinner conversation, and Anthony did that very well.
Yeah, and they're sitting there and she's surrounded by all these taxidermied birds. Well, okay, so British slang definition time. Stuffing the bird was a British slang term for having sex. So stuffed birds all around. I'm like, Alfred Hitchcock, you're an interesting fellow. Yeah, so there were all the references to sex right there. Yeah. And then as they are having the discussion, I agree. He says, the iconic line, a boy's best friend is his mother. And their dialogue, actually, there was some amazing dialogue, frankly, throughout the whole film, where what you said, Betsy, how Hitchcock allowed him to rewrite some of the stuff. I really wonder if this discussion where he says, we're all in our private traps, if that was inspired by his experiences with his own mother.
Yeah. Like in Hollywood, in his life in general, he had a whole lot of, there's a reason why his biography is called Split Image. He was living very much two different lives most of his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can see throughout that discussion, like his frustration creeps in, which I think lowered the guards that he would usually have on himself, so that when Marion mentions, well, why don't you take your mother someplace? And that's where Jenny picked up really well on the shift in the person's manner. It's that shift in the atmosphere where oh crap,
their eyes go cold, there's a whole different feel. It's the crazy starts to shine in the eyeballs, let me put it that way.
Now it's almost electric, and you can feel it in the air, and I've had to deal with that a lot, a few times, and so that's a very tense moment, and I think does a good job of ramping up paranoia when it had started to maybe die down a little bit. And so after that scene with the amazing dialogue, so they go ahead.
A little mad sometimes.
Yes,
I'll go a little mad sometimes.
I don't have that one written down, but I do have the line that says, "People always mean well." And so they appear to go their separate ways. And she is, you see her sort of scribbling at the table and at the desk in the room. And she's clearly trying to figure out how she's going to pay the $700 back.
Yeah. The impression is definitely that she's going to go back, handing the money and try to.
I loved that part of that scene was that whether he intended to or not, he affected her by saying things like, we all go a little mad sometimes, don't we? And she's like, oh my God, I've got to take this money back. So her plan completely shifts talking to him in that little instance. And then it leads to this.
Yeah. And so she, and so she then she's like, okay, whatever. She grabs the note, shreds it up, and decides to flush the pieces of paper. I don't know why. Maybe there was no trash can, or she's trying to get rid of any evidence.
Because I think she was trying to cover her tracks completely. I don't know if it was because she was hoping to slip the money back in and somehow come up with the $700 nobody noticed and therefore no evidence of crime, or if she still wasn't sure completely that she was going to head back in because she didn't know what she would do about the $700.
I think that.
But I think the plan was to try to make sure there was no evidence of those pieces of paper, so there would be nothing in the trash.
So she flushes the paper. Ooh, that scene. Dangerous flushing toilet.
Toilet water swirl. Are you mad at me? What about the children? Oh, I'm sorry.
And then after that, we have the iconic shower scene with the music. And so she's there in the shower, having a nice old time. And
washing her sins away, as it were.
Yes, washing away her sins. And you see through the clear shower curtain the shadow of somebody. There's not enough
dress.
In a woman's dress.
Feminine, shall we say.
Yeah. And so, but not enough to really make out a bunch of details.
No.
And then, kablam, it happens, the attack. Which was a great piece of film work to be able to film that. Film work and editing. Because I know they had to cut the hell out of that scene so that they weren't inadvertently flashing tits, or flashing
like move her hands and
because I mean they panned across her torso and everything, and that would have been risque for the time, certainly. But
I read when you can see like the knife go in, what they actually did was push the knife until it made like an indentation in her stomach and pulled it out and then ran it backwards in the film. And that's how they got that, like where it really looks like it's going into her. They literally like pushed it until it pushed into her stomach and then pulled it out and then ran that backwards to make it look like it was stabbing in.
So it's a great piece of technical work.
Yeah.
As an aside from just the subject matter.
Well, and for Janet Leigh too, so she had to lay half out of that tub with her eyes unblinking for, several takes with the water pouring on her so they can get that 45 seconds where he goes in close on her,
Oh, geez, yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved the juxtaposition of the water going down the drain and then they shift to her dead eyeball staring at the camera. There was a lot of point of view usage. In this film, and it really pulls the viewer in, I think, and you're part of the action as if you were seeing it, as if you were there.
Yeah, I had read that originally, like you said, Hitchcock wanted that. Even if there was a full score for the film, he didn't want there to be a score for that scene. He wanted it just to be you hearing the knife and her screaming and the water. And then he watched it and he was like, I feel like this isn't
working.
We're watching it as an outsider and I want us to be inside.
Yeah. We're there when it's happening.
When the score was added by Bernard Herrmann, then they were like, there it is. There it is. Now we're in it with her because this is like what her inside is doing. It's that panic and you can feel it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
and then and Norman after finds like,
oh God,
Mother, what did you do?
Mother, what have you done?
Blood. And he rushes in and you see him apparently distraught, and that's the point where I'm like, okay, does he really know that it was him? Does he really know that it was his mother? Who was the one who did the killing? We don't know.
I think that my impression was the whole time it was very to me seemed very much like a dissociative personality disorder.
Yeah.
So he did not feel that it was him.
And so,
but that was my take on it, that he really
yeah.
thought his mother did that, and his culpability was that he was cleaning up after her.
Yep.
And it also seemed very clear to me at the time when he was cleaning up after this murder that it was not the first time he asked.
Yes, you just get the feeling because he's going at it very methodically. He's cleaning it up. He's washing the blood from his hands, which is another scene that never would have gotten past the censors. And
now the one thing that kind
color.
of bothered me was how quickly and easily the blood just mopped away.
Yeah.
It's just like one sweep and done. I'm like, I want to know what cleaning product he's using, because blood just it smears. You got to go a couple times.
Yeah, because anybody who's
I mean, not that I've had to clean up after a dead body or anything, but I'm just saying that blood, if you've ever had to deal with it for whatever reason.
Yep, definitely. And then he goes, and he hides her car, and he takes all of her possessions, puts it in the car, including the money.
Her in the trunk as well.
Sinks it into the swamp.
That moment when he pushes it into the swamp and it stops sinking, and he
looks around like, well, now what do I do? Oh wait, it's okay.
There
it starts to go again is so great. I'm like, he plays that so well. It's masterful.
It's one of those thousands of little moments in the movie that just really elevates it from good to fantastic.
Absolutely.
Which also gives you insight to, even if it wasn't Mormon doing these murders, there's obviously something missing there that he could just, his concern was like, oh no, it's not going to go in. What now? Oh, okay, now it is. Not.
Yeah.
And he smiles a little.
He had one moment of compassion for the dead body of the woman, and now it's like, oh, okay. Well,
now it's just something that needs to be getting rid of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after this, you think, okay, well, what next? So her sister shows up to talk to Sam, the boyfriend, and also at the same time you have Arbogast show up.
He's following the sister.
Yeah. He is a private eye who's looking into the case. And as I said, the actor, he was another Twilight Zone alumni, and he's getting into this, and so he decides he's like, okay, what were her past?
First of all, thinks that Sam is hiding, Mary. That's her first guess, and she comes in and she's like, just tell me she's here and she's okay, And Sam, you could tell, has no idea what the hell is going on.
Yeah, he has no idea. He's pissed. For God's sake, somebody tell the poor idiot what's going on.
Because Arbogast does burst in at this point. It's like, yeah, is she here? And he's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Ooh, what?
Somebody tell me something. I have no idea what you two are going on about.
And so they fill Sam in, and the detective, the PI is like, you guys wait here. I'll go check down leads. And somehow he manages to find the hotel where she stayed.
Well, they kind of did the little thing where he went from hotel to hotel in the town.
Yeah.
And just checked all of them.
Yeah, his theory was that even if Sam didn't know she was in town, that this is where she would have gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he started going from boarding house and hotel and everything that was within the city, and probably just started going with anything close by, which they did point out that she was within 15 miles of Fairvale. So,
yeah.
He just probably expanded his search further and further out. So
that makes it all the more horrifying to realize that she was like within
so close to safety.
Miles.
Yeah.
15 miles, but the storm was so bad that she stopped. And
that was it.
It's one of those, if she'd have done 1,000 little things differently,
absolutely,
she'd have been fine.
It'd have been fine.
Yeah.
I can hear my dogs barking in the other room.
Yeah, like, if she hadn't stopped by the car, she might have driven straight through and missed the storm,
if she hadn't stolen the money.
Well, yeah, that would have saved the whole thing. Short movie.
Yeah, then we would have had no movie. So he goes to the hotel, and he's just chatting with Norman, asking him the typical, have you seen this person? I'm looking for her. And Norman's like, oh, nope, not here. Oh. Are you sure? Can you take another look? No, never seen her. But
can we look at your ledger? And that was Norman's fail. He cleaned up all evidence of her being in the room, didn't think about tearing out the ledger page or something like that to hide the fact that anybody even signed it. Or clearly it wasn't premeditated because he wouldn't have had her sign in the first place.
It's not premeditated, but when you see him get the key for Janet, you see him like start to reach.
Yeah, well, that part
toward,
he
like,
wanted to be around
keys.
her. Clearly, he was attracted to her, but I don't think the plan was to kill her. I think
to kill her. You're right.
It was to watch her shower.
Yeah,
he was going to watch her shower. But, so the PI is just, after he sees the ledger, he knows. He's like, okay. Plus, I think he had, the natural suspicion of his job as a PI, and probably by then, you get the point that he's an experienced PI, and so he's probably had a good sense of, I know when somebody's bullshitting me.
Oh yeah. Well, and I loved that they let him know that Anthony Perkins made the decision to stutter a little. Like, it was obvious that he was nervous talking to this person, and while that could be that he's just a little shy, like, the more he lied, the more he would do things like play with his head, like he did this a lot. And I'm like, he's freaked out. You can tell he's freaked out. So of course, if you're a PI, you're watching this, you're like, this man is lying. And the more I push on him, the more he's going to tell the truth, because he can see that I know he's lying.
Yeah, definitely.
Which does happen. And so Arbogast is now aware that she was here.
So he knows.
Yeah, and then basically Norman makes an abbreviated version of her stay, minus the, killed her kind of part. And just says,
we're going to gloss over that part.
She was really tired. I gave her a sandwich. She went to bed. She got up really early and left. I knew she didn't make any phone calls because she said she was too tired. The better answer would have been like, I can check the phone logs, or I would be able to see, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Like, to my knowledge, she didn't make any phone calls, not to be just like, no. But again, it's kind of like when she goes to the car dealership.
Yeah.
Neither of these people work the best under pressure.
No, you can see Norman start to fracture a little bit.
Yeah. Though, of course, Arbogast now knows there's something up, sees the silhouette of the mother in the window. He goes to talk to her, and of course, Mother kills him as well.
And I really like how Hitchcock shot that. As Arbogast, he goes into the house. He's going, he's in the entryway. He doesn't really see anything or obviously like hear anything on the first level. So he starts to go up the stairs, and the way they shot that with him,
stabbed right in the face, and just
how they focused in on him and sort of fuzzed out the
details,
background, almost like it was a portrait mode, like when you're using portrait mode on your phone. And it was very clear at that point, exactly what was going to happen. And right across the face, he falls. There's more stabbing.
Though it is important to note that prior to him doing that, he did call Lila to let her know that he found where she had stayed. And also you could see that he kind of was like, I don't know, it was weird to me that like Arbogast apparently had already made a decision that Lila and Sam were going to go somewhere together. You know what I mean? Because he's like, I think Sam's telling the truth, and I think you'd want to know that. It's like, okay, this was the guy who was just banging my sister, but all right, thanks for letting me know.
Cool.
He's a good guy, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry, letting her know that he was not involved. And so Norman pulls his little cleaning.
One weird little thing about Arbogast, and I'm just curious because we know they didn't call the police, right? They state that implicitly
because they didn't want a scandal.
Do we need a warrant to talk to your mom?
Technically, yes. Arbogast didn't give a shit.
PI.
I mean, it's a PI nothing, but he could have been busted for like illegal entry, trespassing, anything like that. Like,
Well, yeah,
it
but
just means
they could get a warrant to talk to your mom. I'm like, you're a PI, you can't get a warrant.
Yeah. He wouldn't be able to. You're correct. He would have to go to the police. The police would have to get a warrant. The police would have to do the investigation.
Right. Yep. You would have to get the police involved in order to do that. So, I mean, I know he was lying, but also, like, why would you even say that, dude? Come on.
Maybe he used to be a policeman.
Maybe.
I think the idea was that he thought Norman refused to let him check. Well, actually, the warrant comment was about looking in the rooms for Marion. I believe, because he's like, do I need a warrant to check the rooms?
He says, can I talk to your
Norman says,
mom?
no, you can actually come help me change the sheets.
Yeah, no, he says, I want to talk to your mother. And he says, no, she can't see anybody right now. And he's like, do I need a warrant for that? Like he makes the statement, do I need a warrant to talk to your mom? And he said, yes.
For that he did.
Yes.
This is the second time he mentioned warrant then.
Yeah.
He mentioned it first to check the room.
Yeah, because I think he actually was kind of posing himself as being a police officer.
He might have been. I don't know.
I would have to go back and rewatch the beginning of the scene. He was
just trying to intimidate the shit out of Norman.
I was going to say, I know he was trying to intimidate Norman, which he was kind of doing well. But Norman, Norman got
back to that Norman just doesn't do well under pressure.
He does not. And I know part of this is,
Yeah.
Guilt, because he did kill, well, at that point it was 3 people. It was 2 runaways and Marion and soon to be Arbogast, but
we don't know that yet.
Yeah, we don't know that yet.
No, we don't know that yet. That's why it's soon to be.
So and when he disposes of Arbogast's body in the car
in the swamp,
I have a question that comes to mind. How many goddamn cars are in that swamp?
I mean, they were probably going to find quite a trove if they ever dragged the swamp.
Yeah.
At least
I'm pretty sure they were going to find more than 2.
But I'm positive, like, because they're like, do you have other missing girls? Because he claimed 2 more. And I'm like, I bet there's more that he didn't claim.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But that comes later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
even then, just
dead.
Even then, I'm like, more cars. Yeah, I'm just like, more cars.
How big is this swamp?
I don't know. Well, it's like that magical quicksand that we must have believed as kids that was going to be more of a problem.
Because it was everywhere.
It's everywhere in every movie.
Every cartoon.
This is the predecessor to that quicksand. That swamp is. That's where I got the idea.
All the imaginary quicksand was contained within the swamp. Yeah.
So after Arbogast has not gotten back with Sam and the sister, the sister is really the one who pushes.
Yeah, she's like, something's wrong. He said an hour or less. It's 3.5 hours later. This is not making sense.
So,
which, if you don't mind, so Vera Miles,
go for it.
Real interesting actress, and actually the whole time she was filming Psycho, her hair was a wig because she had shaved her head for another part. I think the movie was 5 Branded Women. So she was completely bald doing this.
I love it.
And she was attracted to Hitchcock, I think, for 5 years, but only appeared in 2 of his movies, and I think 1 episode for his Hitchcock Presents series. But she was also supposed to be the lead in what movie was that? Was it Vertigo?
It was Vertigo. Yeah, she was supposed to be the lead in Vertigo.
But they kept delaying the shooting, and by the time they were ready to shoot, she was like, I am way too pregnant now. There's no hiding this.
So she's like, no. She also didn't love the idea of being one of Hitchcock's blondes. So
see, I couldn't find anything that flat out said that, but you probably have read more about that than I have. I just couldn't do anything in a quick internet search that said that she didn't want to be one of Hitchcock's blondes. But
it was like she had the contract and she liked the idea of doing Hitchcock, but she didn't want to be like one of his
controlled. Yeah, because that is what I did find, that the one thing that does consistently go across about Hitchcock is he was very controlling of his leading blondes, to the point where like the wardrobe he had for them was not just for the movies. They were to wear it offset as well while they were under contract. Like he controlled how they did their hair, what they wore, a lot of the engagements they went to and stuff too.
He was a very dictatorial and I think somewhat abusive director to the women on his movies.
Though the only woman that I have seen that has flat out accused him of abuse and sexual assault was Tippi Hedren. And that's a whole other, story there.
You hear, there's a whole episode of this podcast called Behind the Bastards on him, because he's not a great person.
No.
Nope.
But there were more people who came out later who were like, yeah, technically he probably sexually harassed me, but he also got a really good performance out of me. So I appreciated him as a director, even though he was a crappy person, which is an interesting view to have.
Well, I also assumed a lot of it slid because a lot of women in the time just accepted that behavior is not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, even now, how much do people let slide?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. So
yeah, like you just know that this one,
which makes me feel even sorry for Tippy because she probably still feels all alone. You know what I mean about that?
Absolutely. That had to be horrible for her. That's like you know, going into a totally different, but like Shelley Duvall with Kubrick.
Yeah,
it's the same thing where like she's the only person who's saying like, this was really, really flipping bad. I don't think you understand. And people are like, but it was genius. And you're like, but he also tortured me and almost blinded me. So can we?
Yeah, that's when you're like, yeah, but what a cost.
Yeah, and actually, like some people did try to say that like Janet Leigh was badly treated on the set, and she actually has come out and been like, actually, they couldn't have been nicer. You know, I was, you know, scantily clad for long periods of time in the water, and they made sure that the water was always warm for me so that I wasn't uncomfortable laying there because it would be long periods of time. Like that took 5 days to shoot because
my word,
from so many different angles. And while some of that was not her, I found out they actually used a Playboy model for some of the shoot.
Well, I mean, that's not surprising. I assumed they had a body double.
Yeah, so they had a Playboy model come in and do some of the work, but most of it was her with like the nude suit on, just laying there in the water for long periods of time. She's like, no, they were so nice. There's rumors the water was cold, you know, all the stuff that it was basically torture. She's like, it was not. I was in the water for far too long, but they made sure it was as comfortable as possible for being in the water for such a long time.
Yeah. So they the sister and Sam,
Lila and Sam
you know, go off to do their investigating, and they go to talk to the sheriff, to talk to him, and that scene
is the sheriff's wife though.
Yes, I actually have a note about her. That's when you start to get confirmation
of the crazy
that something ain't right.
And it was so funny because it was like, she's like, here, I'll call.
Yeah.
Like let's just not argue with them. Let's help these kids out. Let me call.
Yeah. Well, it's like, because Sam mentions Mrs. Bates, and you see this look go from her to her husband and back. And
it's a good picture of the side eye there that got pulled.
Yeah, and that is really the moment where you're like, okay, all right, things are starting to come to fruition. You know, the truths are starting to be revealed. You know, and during this, one of those, you know, things you said that it's the first whisper you get when the sheriff goes, oh, you know, you remember that bad business there about 10 years ago. And your ears as a watcher perk up and you're like, oh,
what bad business?
Bad business.
Do tell, sheriff. Do tell.
Yeah, that's a plot point right there. So but nobody says anything. Like the two people who may or may not know about it, nobody says anything about whatever that business was.
Yeah, it takes them a while to reveal that.
Yeah, we'll find that out later. But the sheriff does reveal that Norman's mother
is dead.
She's been dead
for 10 years.
And supposedly buried 10 years on.
When he goes, well, if that's Mrs. Bates, then who's buried over there in the cemetery?
Over in Green Line.
And I love the wife. She's like, I helped pick out the dress. Periwinkle blue.
Yeah.
That may be one of my favorite scenes.
All the things that stick in my head, I just now always remember with the periwinkle blue dress.
I love the sheriff's wife. She's so funny, you know, and you do find out a little bit of Norman's background in that scene, you know, that supposedly his mother killed her lover in a murder-suicide, And then Norman found them in bed together.
Folks, they weren't married. You have to understand.
No, they weren't. It was
right.
No, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said they were. I misheard.
That's okay.
Yeah. But so in widow, and there's a little bit less of a scandal because she was a widow, but still, it could be overlooked.
It's supposed to be that, like, so the murder suicide theory was supposed to be done because she found out that guy was supposedly married still. So she found out that Norman's mother, the theory was, found out that she was having an affair with a married man and then killed him and then herself. Was what the 10-year-old scandal was thought at the time.
My counterpoint is, well, Norman's the one that found them. We only have his word that the mother, may have poisoned her lover.
Yeah.
It's so did Norman poison the both of them?
Well, it comes out later that yes, he did.
Yeah. It brings that up.
But at the time, you like, I do wonder what happened here.
Yeah.
And also, who do we keep seeing in the window if his mother is dead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who can it be? What can it be? Is she really dead? All these things are more very slowly seemingly revealed, but it really wasn't that slow. But it's funny because like the whole half hour you have this build up about Marion, and then it just feels like this very long haul about what the fuck happened. And it's really not that long, but you're like, if you've never seen the movie, the first time you see it, you're like, what happened? Now, of course, 30, 40 years later, you probably don't need to see the movie and you know what happened because it's just classic and iconic now.
Cultural knowledge at this point.
But when you were a kid watching it, you're like, what happened?
Come on,
show me.
So, the sister, Lily and Sam go to do some of their own investigating. So
the sheriff promises at some point he'll go out there and check it out.
Yeah.
See what's going on, who the woman in the house might be.
Yeah, and they, I think that's then they're like, okay, all right, fine, and they leave, and then they come back like the next day.
Yeah, and they go to see the sheriff because they decide they were going to go out there with the sheriff. And the sheriff reveals that he'd already gone out there. There's no sign of any woman in that house because earlier in a scene that you see, Norman takes his mother down to the fruit cellar.
Don't put me in the fruit cellar. Don't hide me.
His mother's very adamant about not going into the fruit cellar because she had to hide there before, and she did not like it. And you can't tell at this point what's happening still. There is definitely something being carried.
Somebody up, like something up that looks like a person, and carry it downstairs.
Yeah.
And I have to give Hitchcock props. It's very well done because you really can't see. You can see that she doesn't seem to be kicking and struggling when he's carrying her downstairs, but she also does not appear to be limp and boneless either. You know what I mean? Like just flopped over.
There's enough of a form that it's like, okay, if she's very, very weak, he could certainly manhandle her. And because you're led to believe she's somewhat invalid. Yeah. So, or it has periods of being somewhat invalid.
Yeah.
So
it makes a point of saying she's an invalid fairly often. So
but that part did have one of my favorite scenes because they go to the to see the sheriff, and the sheriff and his wife are coming out of the church, and they're like, oh no, he already went over there. And then the sheriff's wife's like,
yes,
it's Sunday, why don't you come by and file the dinner for your daughter or your sister and have dinner, it'll be nice. And you're like,
it's much more pleasant than filing a report about your sister being a thief and disappearing at the just come have Sunday dinner and we'll just talk.
And I was like, that woman, I am down for that woman.
she's just like make this as comfortable as possible for you, just like a sweet, smooth things over kind of lady.
She's so matter of fact. It's like, oh, okay, well, now
it's gonna happen,
and moves on.
It's so obvious that like her husband's been the sheriff forever, and she's like, this is just what we do.
Yeah.
It's a small town.
Have the criminals over for dinner before we stick them in the cell. I mean, they need a good
well, you get the feeling like that their biggest trouble is, when Billy Joe stole a pie from somebody's window.
Yeah.
they don't have this happen here.
No.
Clearly, I mean, there was the scandalous murder-suicide 10 years ago, but other than that bad business, it's just small time stuff.
Yep. No, and so Lily and Sam go to do their own investigating, and that's
Lila's
when
still unsatisfied, and so is Sam.
yeah,
And so they're like,
and the speed of the movie picks up
then
at that point.
Yeah, it really elevates at that point.
Yeah, you know, they check into their room as a supposedly married couple, and you see, like, from the beginning that
total ship to Norman.
Yeah.
By the way, no signing the ledger, you know, doesn't question them about not having luggage.
Which, frankly, at that point, I also have in my notes, okay, Norman says hardly anybody ever shows up. Suddenly he's had
Marion,
Arbogast, and now this married couple, he's not going to get suspicious. Now, so you can see that Norman is like,
something's up.
This is a little weird.
It's just, they were also checking in like really early in the day. Like it was obviously like quite early. Like you're like, well, why wouldn't you just move on? I mean, you'd probably find another hotel if you just kept going. They're like, no, we want to spend the whole night.
Look at the sky. It looks like it might be bad soon.
When in the movie it's very light at that point.
Yeah, right? I don't know if there's something was lost in the black and white, but it looked like a very sunny day.
It did to me. I think they maybe should have cast a little bit of shadow over it.
Or you were supposed to know that it was a sunny day and that they were playing.
I was gonna say, or you were supposed to know that they were making weird excuses that don't even make sense, which is why Norman is kind of like, okay,
my money is on that.
Yeah, hard to say though, because like black and white does kind of obscure that.
I agree. Well, and so essentially they check out the room, and Lily finds the scrap of paper that didn't quite flush all the way.
Yeah, but Lila's assumption is that Norman found the money, murdered Marion, stole the money, and so she's thinking
my favorite part is that all of them are like, it's the money. It's all about the money.
Yeah, they don't even think it could be something else.
No,
because I mean, to be honest, if we were investigating, that's what we would think.
I was going to say, you would absolutely think, oh, well, maybe she was murdered for the money.
So other than the weirdness about the mother who's supposed to be dead but might be in the window.
Yeah.
Because why would this PI say it was Norman's mother? You know, that's the one weird piece that might make you think that something else was up. But yeah, generally your brain's going to be $40,000, whereas Rebecca pulled out $357,000. It's about the money.
I pulled up an inflation calculator to check that out.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
And so Lila she's pretty much invigorated now. She has in her hands concrete documentable proof she was here, and she believes that her sister was indeed planning to pay back the money.
Now, of course, Sam deflates her for a minute there because she's super excited. She's like, this proves it. And Sam's like, it proves what we already knew. She was here. We knew that already. We've got nothing else really except for that piece of paper, just physical evidence of what we already knew. You know, she's like,
yeah.
Which they're like, Lila's like, I got to talk to the mother. I mean, so Sam's like, oh, it's dangerous. And she's like, it's an old, frail, invalid woman. I can handle it. You just run interference with Norman.
And he did in like very obvious ways. Sam goes. He
wasn't even trying for subtlety on any level
to keep Norman busy, and he's making zero pretense of being a business traveler. No, he's asking all these loaded questions and being pushy. And
wouldn't you love it if you had $40,000 to buy a new hotel somewhere?
Yeah.
Like totally, like just off the wall in your face, nothing subtle, nothing distracting. Like it's like Sam's whole goal must have been to rile him up, because I don't know what the fuck else he planned on achieving with that line.
No, there's nothing else. That he was just like egging him on, getting him to be
aggressively in his face. I mean, Well, meanwhile, Lila's searching the whole house because Mother is not in her room. Of course, she's down in the fruit cellar. So yeah, she goes upstairs.
That
she sees
imprint
mom's
in
room.
the bed is
So creepy.
Creepy. She's looking
Like,
in the room.
Is he just stick
Yeah.
her body there and wait?
I don't know.
so creepy.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's pretty gross. And she's looking around and like she goes to the dressing table, I think it is, where some stuff is set. And I don't know why. It seems like they focus on the bronze of those gloves.
it's bronze praying hands.
Yeah, was
Okay.
it supposed to be like a
for funerals? They're like a
as I said, was it
memorial.
a
Okay.
funerary ornament of some sort? Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't tell if it was that or if it was like a set of her gloves that had been bronze, you know, like how they bronze baby shoes.
Yeah.
Some kind of memento mori or
Yeah.
something.
But it was definitely a memento mori. Like it was definitely
Yes.
like someone has passed.
Yeah, because you see the look on her face that she's like, oh my God.
This woman is back dead, this seems.
Yeah. And then I guess she catches a reflection of herself in
Freaks
another
herself
mirror
out,
or
and she
something.
might, you know.
Freaks herself out, which I perfectly understandable. You're illicitly in somebody's house, investigating God knows what, and you're, oh my God, okay, all right, oh, whew, it's fine. I'm gonna continue my search.
And then there's that search into Norman's childhood room, which I assume is still the room he sleeps in.
That's
kind of like,
that was the same impression I got, that was his room.
and it was very not unchanged, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you saw like his little stuffed bear,
Toys, yeah.
I guess. It looked like he still slept with his stuffies.
I mean, but so do I. So that's not...
yeah, I know. I mean, I don't find any shame in that either.
Although you can see where, like, again, we're going back to toxic masculinity of the 1960s. A man who still sleeps with a teddy bear would be really looked down upon.
Yeah.
Oh boy, howdy, yes.
Like,
yeah, definitely.
That would not.
So yeah, Lila hears Norman coming back. She goes to run and hide, ends up heading towards the basement just to hide in the stairwell at first. And then something about the doorway catches her attention.
I think maybe she figures she can take a back way out.
She sees something through the window. I think she saw like the silhouette of a woman or something sitting there. Like, I think that's what it was. It's kind of hard to tell, but there's like a little fuzzy outline when you watch the movie that you can see that she's kind of like, is that a person? Is kind of what it looked like to me. But,
yeah.
And she goes down there
through the cellar, and it feels like the fruit cellar portion, or that little room where Mother is a little bit like a back section of the cellar.
Old
she
root
goes
cellar.
in there, and Mrs. Bates, and puts her hand on Mrs. Bates' shoulder. And that's when Mrs. Bates turns around and you have the big reveal.
Yeah.
You've seen
semi-mummified mummy
in front of you, a semi-mummified, desiccated corpse.
Yeah. Which this is like the most like engineered scene. Like, it's just obviously engineered, and I get the effect you wanted, but there's just no way you can make this hand going directly for the light bulb hit look natural. And that was the one that bothered me, because it was like, you know, if you swung out your hand, I don't know, maybe it could have done it, but the way she did it, she was just trying to precisely hit the light bulb, and you could tell it, you know, like the whole idea was so she'd swing her arm back in fear and hit the light bulb. Yeah. And it was a nice effect with the swinging light, but
I was going to say, but it did then make the swinging light, but I think there should have been a more natural way you could have.
It was not organic.
Yeah.
Not organic at all. And big moment, Rebecca, come on.
And so she screams, ah! And in busts Norman / Mother. He's got a wig, he's in a dress, and he's got the knife, and he's like he's ready for some stabbing.
Which that came across very comedic to me. It's just much scarier as a silhouette than full on, because it just looks
well, the unknown is always scarier than the known.
Yes, when you see it, you're just like,
you know, although he did a good job with facial expressions, so just seemingly just
he is
utterly insane at this point. He has broken with reality. And he
Sam
is
to the
sort of
rescue.
at the limits of himself. And
Clearly
Sam
not
comes
himself
in.
at this moment.
Yeah.
Fun fact. So you notice he doesn't really make any noise in that, but he's like opening his mouth like he's silently screaming. He was getting ready to do a musical on Broadway. And when they were shooting those scenes, he's like, look, I need to spare my voice. Can we just do a voiceover and add in a scream for this part? And so Alfred was like, oh yeah, that's not a problem. We can do that. And so they shot it, but Alfred liked how it looked so much with it being silent screaming, where it's like it's happening, but there's no sound happening, that he left it and didn't put any voice in over it. So,
kudos to Norman for the quick change, by the way, because he like ran from the hotel, got the wig and the dress on, grabbed the knife, and was ready to go in like minutes.
Yeah. Whoosh.
But I just thought that was like a weird, interesting fact about that scene.
That's interesting. You know, it gives certainly a more of a feel of just a wrongness, you could say.
And like you can tell, like, aside from the fact that he's wearing his mother's clothes, that's weird. But
yeah,
you can see that he's cracked. Like,
yes,
officially,
yes,
something is wrong, because this is not the man that we were seeing earlier on, who was kind of awkwardly charming. This
or
is
intimidated or any of that. This is something else completely.
The dominant person, as they say, the dominant personality is in charge firmly.
So it's Sam Loomis to the rescue,
saves the day,
and the next
but
thing
it's
you know,
not the end of the movie quite. You still
we're
have
all
about
at the city jail, basically, or the town halls.
Well, and it takes, I think, like a good another 13 minutes of the movie.
At least 10 for them to the denouement of what happened. The reveal was not in fact a murder suicide. It was a double homicide that got the mother and the lover.
Yep. And the psychiatrist, like, is he insane? And he's like, well, my job is to just find out what's going on.
Not trying to come up with a plea. I'm just telling you, this dude is nuts.
Right. Like,
he is certifiable.
Not my job to do that, but I will tell you that he is his mother, and
he is gone. It's just mother now.
Yes, the dominant personality is in charge, and the dominant personality was his mother.
Very slow, deliberate unraveling of what had happened, and and then that nice little bit in there where somebody was like, well, why was he wearing his mother's clothes? And so it was like, he's a transvestite. And the psychologist like, no, not really.
Yeah. He's like, yes and no.
I liked the explanation. Like, he's not trying to change his sex. He's not
going to get kink out of dressing as a woman. It's just nothing like that.
It's just that in his mind, he is his mother.
Yep.
Which is weirder, guys.
It's not the same thing.
That's not the same thing.
This is a pathological issue. That's just
what somebody does.
I was gonna say, that's something that's natural and happens.
One of these things is odd, the other is normal. So, and we're definitely in the odd category right now.
Yes.
And so, there's basically the extemporaneous dialogue to really explain a lot of the background. And it basically just, you understand all the psychological lead up that made Norman what he is. That his mother was the classic, what I call the classic serial killer mother. Because you always read about these serial killers these days, whenever you read about it in true crime stuff, there is always like, oh, his mother was extremely controlling and abusive, blah, 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 that run down the list of problems.
Like, bathtubs full with hot bleach and friends,
horrible things.
Or even just like was like, he was a bedwetter, so she would put his sheets out every day so that everybody would know that he had wet the bed.
Yeah.
Weird cruelties that you're like, oh.
Yeah. So you get a good picture of the disintegration of Norman throughout that.
And they ended with showing the mother completely taking over.
Yes, that was a great series of shots. You have a policeman coming in and it's like, oh, he's a little chilled. Can I bring in this blanket? And the detective's like, whatever. So the camera follows the policeman down the hall, and you see it switch to view of Norman, and they're doing some voiceover of the mother's voice. She's talking and can't believe I had to blame my son and blah blah blah, or I forget all the dialogue with that.
Yeah, basically, she's saying it's the worst thing for a mother to have to like
turn her son in, but
basically implying that it had been him all along and he was trying to blame her, but they'll never know.
I'm just gonna sit here. I'm gonna sit here still as anything. I'm not even gonna swat at that fly.
And they'll say,
not gonna get anything else, and they'll see.
She wouldn't even hurt a fly.
And he's, he's looking down and he's looking down, and all of a sudden, you don't see him really raise his head, but his eyes come forward to the camera, to you at the end. And that was such a lovely, creepy shot to close it on.
TikTok challenge.
Oh no.
Yeah. They're like, you can look creepy at any time. Look down, look up, and then just smile a little. And it's like, you automatically look creepy. I'm like, they're not wrong.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah. That is absolutely what happened.
Yeah. And I am actually slightly incorrect. The final shot of the movie is them pulling out cars from the swamp.
Oh yeah, that's right. You keep reading that too because you almost forget it.
Yeah.
And there's a really subtle overlay right there at the end. So it's him doing the little look up. They do an overlay of the mother's face where you can see the tear over his mouth, and then it goes to the car, and it's a really cool shot, like a really cool, like blink and you'll miss it shot. But it's
I was paying enough attention when I was watching.
Yeah, it's really cool. They do just this tiny overlay, and you can see like the teeth are the main part that you can see, and kind of his eyes go sunken, and then it goes out.
Yeah.
And then
I think it's just because it just gets so overwhelmed by the creepiness of, she wouldn't even hurt a fly. You see all this stuff, but your brain doesn't quite process it. You just keep getting fixed in that crazy moment when he looks up, and yeah.
God, it's such a good film.
Yeah. I know. I think I saw it the first time, maybe here at Gateway.
Oh wow. Hitchcocktober, is that what they called it? I can never say that without China.
Yeah,
Hitchcocktober.
Hitchcocktober.
I emphasized the little middle part a little too much.
October.
Yeah,
I'm a little infantile sometimes. I apologize.
Nah, that is here in Columbus. There's a Gateway Film Center. It's a nonprofit film center which does really
great things.
Fantastic programming and great things. And so for the month of October, they will have a Hitchcock festival, basically, and they'll show Hitchcock movies. And it's
real good.
And when there's not a pandemic going on, it's great to go to.
And you can get rum and or vodka in your slushies.
Yes, you can get vodka slushies or rum slushies. So this is a high selling point. I at times in the past have had a movie membership to the theater, which allows me basically unlimited films.
I should do that because I love to go to the Gateway. It's probably one of my favorites. Like,
Studio 35 is still my favorite because I can walk there, get my M&Ms and my popcorn, and get totally drunk and walk home.
I like Gateway for the fact that there's parking, and it's only $1.
Yeah. That garage is
it's if you're getting your ticket validated for parking.
Right. Otherwise, I think it's still only like $5 or something. It's still pretty inexpensive for that area.
Well, and there's a lot of stuff they show at Gateway you won't be able to see anywhere else because of it's not for profit status and what it does. Yeah.
But for that, I mean, that's Psycho, folks.
Yeah. Watch it if you haven't. Watch it. If you watched it a long time ago, watch it again.
Watch it again.
Fun fact about Psycho.
Yes.
The filming company was what am I looking for? Production company? That's not what I'm looking for either. The studio.
Distribution?
The studio was so sure that it was going to be a flop that they let Hitchcock forego his usual fee for 60% of the profit. So he had an $800,000 budget, and the movie earned $40 million.
I thought it was $50 million.
$40 million in the first year.
Oh, okay. Right.
So he made so much money.
Too much money.
So much money, and it basically set him up for the rest of his career.
And the studio was like, what did we do?
Oh, absolutely. Because they were like, this is going to flop. There's no way it's going to work. It's a black and white movie in a time of color. No.
Well, my mom said about that they wouldn't have thought it was weird that it was black and white.
Because that happened a lot.
You were still, it happened frequently enough. Plus, you were so used to watching TV in black and white that it didn't really faze you that it was in black and white.
Now, you two of you might want to correct me, but I recall reading that actually because the studio thought it was such a flop, going to be such a flop, that they didn't put anything into advertising, and that like Alma and Hitchcock themselves came up with those gambits where like you couldn't be late, you had to get into the theater on time, you couldn't leave the theater once you got there, and would just promo it up with the scariness of it and how it's not for the faint of heart, like that kind of level of getting people to the theaters.
Oh yeah. My favorite of the advertisements that I heard that he did was, oh crap, I'm gonna forget it. But it was basically one of those like brand X things where they used to say brand X does this, brand Y does this. So they were like, brand X movie sounds like this. And it was the sound of horse hooves. So it was obviously a Western. And they're like, but brand Y movie sounds like this. And it was just screaming. And then they were like, Psycho. This is one of their ads. So they did like crazy, weird viral marketing campaigns. They had stand-ups in the theaters of Alfred, saying things like, giving them like warnings and, like not for the faint of heart. If you come, if they came after like, I want to say right after it began, like then they would be turned away.
Yeah. They wouldn't let latecomers in because he didn't want to have them feel cheated if they frankly missed having Janet Leigh on screen.
Right. And I'm like, this is honestly, he was brilliant in how he marketed it. Brilliant. But that's, I mean, him and his wife were pretty prolific that way.
Yeah. And, Alma was, I mean, she was like an editor, an assistant director,
she edited
screenwriter, continuity supervisor as well. So, she was the one in charge of making sure the shots lined up and made sense, and you didn't see things that were in one scene, out of the scene, back in the scene. That was all her. And anything Hitchcock did, he ran by Alma first. If Alma liked it, he did it. If Alma did not like it, he did not do it.
Hi, Ham.
Ham likes Hitchcock too. He's black and white, so he fits it. And
my dogs are freaking out, or Sparks is freaking out because he's like, he can't get in the room.
It's definitely one, if you haven't watched it in a bit, watch it. I've watched it twice in 2 weeks, and I might watch it again.
Not quite tired of it yet.
So Betsy, your hot take on the movie?
My hot take on the movie is this is one of those movies where when people are like, but can you separate the art from the art, from the artist? Because Hitchcock is not a great person.
Yeah.
Like we know he wasn't a great person. And yes, I absolutely will separate art from the artist. In this instance, this is such a good film. It works from start to finish. And like you said, sometimes there are moments where you're like, this could have gone a little faster, but for the most part, the pacing is beautiful. And he really like lays things out for you. So you're like, I was trying to watch this and think about what it would have been like to see this, not knowing anything about it. Because even by the time like I saw it, even when I was a kid, I knew a lot of the plot points of it because they made fun of it in like cartoons and stuff. So like you knew kind of an idea of what was going to happen here. I was trying to watch this and think, okay, what if you didn't know at all that his mom didn't exist? So knowing that and rewatching it, I'm like, where would I have figured that out? And it would have been with the sheriff and his wife when they said, no, his mother's dead. And you're like, this changes everything.
Who's in the house?
Wait a minute. Yeah. What is happening?
Because you have that knowledge that the sheriff doesn't. Somebody was seeing something, and he kept saying
like
his mother was alive.
And you wouldn't think that there's a corpse sitting in the house. You're like, was he acting out like both roles? Does he have somebody else?
Woman?
Yeah, that was my next You know, did he kidnap someone and to
Yeah.
force
It's
them to
really
play this
brilliant.
role? Yeah, it's very done well.
Yeah, so wonderful. And honestly so good. It's so
I know.
I cannot recommend this one enough. If you are someone who has never seen this, which I cannot imagine, but if you are someone who has never seen this, watch the movie. It's so good, so well done, builds the suspense beautifully. We really didn't ruin anything. You will still be shocked when stuff happens. Trust me.
Yeah, even knowing the end, the first time I saw the movie, I was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah.
It's a good film.
Yeah. Jenny?
The same, and though I put it I'm like, come on. It wasn't because the pacing was bad. It's because I am an impatient woman. So I'm like, come on, do the reveal.
Let's go. We want to see.
It's the last page of the book, damn it. But no, it's actually perfectly timed, because right when I was getting frustrated to the point, like, just fucking tell me. He's like, oh, okay, thank you.
There it is. Thanks.
I will also add, so like for the first time ever, I watched Psycho 2. I'd never watched it before until like I started doing this, and I would recommend that you do watch it as well after this one, just because it lines up really well, and it's one of the earlier movies that does the whole "did you create the criminal" kind of bit, and it does it really well.
I will look into that.
And I think it's like free on Roku right now or something like that. So you should be able to watch it.
There are 2 sequels to it, as far as I know, the Psycho 2.
There's 3. At least 3, which I haven't watched yet. There might be a 4. And there's also a remake, but don't bother with that trash. It doesn't add anything. It's literally a shot for shot redo.
Shot by shot remake only. I'm
not
sorry.
As good actors, and
I'm fine with Vince Vaughn, but Vince Vaughn is not Anthony Perkins, and he doesn't have the charm.
And Nash is
that
not
Anthony
Vera
Perkins
Miles,
has.
and it's just not good.
There are some actors that are iconic in their roles.
Yes,
and I think it's safe to say that Anthony Perkins in
Janet
Psycho
Leigh and Vera Miles, they
iconic enough
own these roles.
That you can't picture somebody else playing the role, even if it's done well. You're like,
it's still not going to line up the same.
This is not the
You're going to be left wanting to see these people do it. And that's my other point. It's just stellar acting for the most part. Maybe like for Hitchcock to give him, I guess, some due in this point, that he might have referred to John Gavin as a stiff, because compared to the other acting, he's not bad, but he's just kind of there.
He's obviously the straight man. He's there to be the straight man, and that's not exciting.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, aside from when he's just being like a aggressive jackass to Norman, which you actually, like me personally, I actually was not liking Sam Loomis in that moment. I'm like, no, poor Norman. I know he's a murdering psychopath. Obviously.
But you feel a little bit of empathy for him.
Don't be mean to him.
Yeah.
Which I think is what they wanted. So success. I
agree.
Yeah.
Good for you, because I totally was rooting for him in that moment, which is horrible. But yes, I was absolutely rooting for the murderer at that time. I was like,
I mean, I kind of thought the character of Sam Loomis was a bit of a prick until like he kind of softens when he's with Lila, the sister. But prior to
even there at the beginning when oh my God, Marion,
when they're in the hotel room,
when they're in the hotel room and Marion's like, I don't care, let's just get married. Like,
I like the stamps.
It's fine, I'll help you pay off these debts, whatever. And he's like, no. And you're like, what more does she? I understand that you probably have this sense of masculine pride that says whatever, but she wants this from you. And if you want to have a relationship with her, which it seems like you do, maybe compromise.
I mean, likely she was better off dead, honestly. I mean, generally she'd have been better off single, but Sam didn't look like a great alternative to death. So he was cute. I mean, great for a fuck. I don't think I'd want to marry him though.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
Entertainment purposes only.
Right?
But Rebecca, your hot take, please.
Well, I don't have a lot to add, but I thought this was a very well done movie. It was solidly put together. They did an excellent job of using the cinematography, how the point of view shots, and the use of the soundtrack to amp up tension.
Absolutely.
It was a very cohesive story. I thought they did the pacing very well. I agree with Jenny Leo. There's a couple times where it drags a little, but that's not a huge portion. No. Yeah. So overall, this is one that I think is one of those that even if you have seen it, it's always worth a rewatch. Because I feel like it's one of those that you'll always pick up a little bit. You'll pick up different things each time you watch it because it is so packed with significant moments.
Stupid thing I picked up this time is that I knew he was eating candy corn. Like I knew that was a part of
yeah.
But I also realized this time that the bag of candy corn, it's spelled Kandy Korn. It's candy corn with a K.
Yep. I saw that.
I didn't notice that before. Like I knew he was eating candy corn because I knew that, but I didn't realize it.
Which also should let you know he's a psychopath because candy corn is nasty.
Hey, I like it.
All right, Rebecca, just out yourself.
Yeah, I know.
So you are doing this with two psychos because I am also a candy corn fan.
Who else would be friends with me though?
All of us are a little damaged in some way.
I also just have to mention
sometimes
this soundtrack. One, I looked it up because I just wanted to learn more about the soundtrack because I love it. So the guy who wrote the soundtrack was also working on a limited budget because of course they only had, $800,000 for the entire film. So he was also working on limited budget. So he was like, well, I'm not going to use a full orchestra. All I'm going to use is the strings specifically. And then he used a lot of plucking instead of actual bow work for them, which is how you get the staccato because he didn't have a timpani. He didn't have any percussion whatsoever. All the percussion is done using those instruments. It's all strings.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So when he was doing this, all of this he did with this very limited orchestra. And also for the music, because I'm a huge dork, several seasons ago on Dancing with the Stars, Ricki Lake was on. And she and Derek Huff danced a Argentine tango to the Psycho soundtrack.
That would be fucking phenomenal.
And it is one of my favorite dances I've ever watched on anything.
I'm going to have to look that up.
And it is so good. I cannot recommend enough watching it because it's seriously one of my favorite things I've ever watched. It you know how they'll pop up and they'll be Psycho soundtrack. And I was like,
what?
Yes, I will watch this. And then I'm like, one, how good is this damn soundtrack? Two, this dance is intense because it's that tango. They're already super intense anyway. And then that music. Whew. So look it up. It's really fun to watch. And it gives you that soundtrack wonderfulness that's in there because that's such a good, iconic soundtrack. And Herman, who actually did it, Benny Herman or Bernard Herrmann, actually did music for several Hitchcock. They ended up being such good friends that Hitchcock would literally just be like, well, write music and let him have his way, which Hitchcock did not do. Yeah. So they became so close that Hitchcock was like, here, just do this. I need music for this. Go. Which is unusual for Hitchcock. But yeah. And this soundtrack wasn't nominated for an Academy Award because they liked jazz at the time. And this was not a jazz soundtrack. So even though it is
not
on one of the top 10 ever soundtracks, now it was never nominated for awards because it just wasn't popular. That style of music wasn't popular at the time.
Anyway,
that's interesting.
A whole thing I could do on the Academy Awards.
Sure.
I know.
But anyway, I guess we should wrap it up. So
I think we should. It's 6:40. I think we've been at this for about an hour and a half.
So we got it. Girls Go Schools. I'm Jenny Morrow.
I'm Betsy.
I'm Rebecca Cunningham.
And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you probably next month with something else fun and exciting.
Woohoo.
And ghoulish.